All right, today I'm creating this screencast so we can work on assignment number 4. You're going to find this in the week 5 folder. So assignment number 4 is the quest check-in, disrupting the geosphere. So if we click on this assignment, you can see our learning target says I can describe how a forest fire will directly impact the geosphere of the Earth. So after completing the second lesson, we've learned all about how the geosphere is impacted by fires. We've learned all about different landforms on the surface of the Earth. And so in this quest check-in, we're going to check your understanding of how well you understand the connections between a forest fire and the impacts on the geosphere. To complete this assignment, you need to log into Clever in Savas. Remember, the best way to do that is to use the Clever app on your iPad. So you click on the Clever app, you use your Tech ID and your password, and you can log into our Savas system and you can find this assignment. It's called Quest Check-in, Disrupting the Geosphere. Once you're in the assignment, it's going to look like this. So it says the geosphere around us. Did you know that fire can change rocks? The geosphere includes the earth and landforms on it. When it comes to forest fires, the geosphere is affected along with the biosphere, the hydrosphere, and the atmosphere. We spend a lot of time learning about the different spheres of the earth, and this interactive is going to focus on how does a forest fire impact the geosphere. If we look at the picture, you can see this is clearly the geosphere. We've got some foothills and some small mountains. We've got soil, we've got rocks. This is the surface of the earth that you're seeing. And it's pretty much exposed. You don't see any tree cover, you don't see any lakes there. The surface of the earth is completely exposed. On the next slide, you have a couple of questions that go with this picture. And it says forest fire circumstances. Which of these conditions would make it easier for a forest fire to start? So we're thinking about the geosphere, thinking about the causes of a forest fire. So our choices are: it had not rained in several weeks, the lightning struck in the middle of the day, it was very hot and humid. So if you look at this picture, there's some clues there. You can see the brush. It looks like it has burned already. Looks very dry there. So you have to think about what would the conditions be to create a forest fire. The second one says, which is most likely to catch fire after a lightning strike? So if the lightning hit this area, what in this picture do you think would most likely catch fire? Would it be the underbrush, like the grass and the weeds and the brush in this area? Would it be living trees, these green trees here? Or would it be like the forest canopy, like the upper parts of the tree? On this slide, we're looking at a river valley. We can see we've got the river in the middle. We've got large rocks alongside the shoreline. We have a tree-lined hill or kind of valley that leads into the river. And it says, parts of the geosphere. This image shows a healthy mountain ecosystem. Explore the hot spots to see different ways a forest fire might impact different areas of the geosphere. So what I want you to imagine is what this place would look like if a forest fire came through here. Pretty much the river would be the same, but the trees would be all burnt. The landscape would be exposed. So if I click here, you can see as the vegetation is burned down, the land becomes more susceptible to wind erosion from the atmosphere. So think about it. If all these trees are gone and the wind is whipping through this canyon, which it commonly would do, the wind would blow the soil, the rocks, and the dirt, and it would start to break down that steep riverbank. And over time, that bank could be eroded away. It could change its location, it could change its shape, and it could start to be weathered away. If we look over here, another effect is steep slopes that lose their vegetation are more susceptible to landslides and mudslides after rainstorms. So you can see in this picture, it looks like all the vegetation is gone from possibly a fire, and now all it takes is a heavy rain, and this slope can just kind of slide right down into the river. That's one of the big effects that a forest fire would have on the geosphere, is it can make erosion and weathering much easier to occur. This slide's pretty interesting. It's talking a lot about what happens to the geosphere after a forest fire. So it says geosphere recovery. Even though the atmosphere, the geosphere, the hydrosphere, and the biosphere all suffer greatly in the short term, there are positive side effects of forest fires. Fires clear away all the dead underbrush from the forest and make room for new plants. The plants have fresh, loose, mineral, and nutrient-rich soil to start growing in. If we look at the graph here, we have a line graph, and it shows us the growth of a forest versus time after a forest fire. And you can see it starts out really slow. There's almost no growth after a forest fire. Over time, you can see it's growing kind of linear. You can see the growth continues to get quicker and quicker over time. This is showing us that forests and underbrush and grass can all come back after a forest fire. This is kind of an interesting picture. This is showing you what the soil horizon looks like. A soil horizon are the different layers of soil that you would see if you dig down into the ground. And this is showing us what it would look like after a forest fire. Notice some things. There's lots of kind of cracks in the soil. Looks like there's lots of white minerals, which is probably calcium and calcite. And you can see that the soil is very broken up. And so it's very nutrient rich. You can see lots of blacks and probably carbon and ash in the soil. And plants can really benefit from that. You can see the roots can very easily penetrate into the ground. They have carbon from the fire that they can use to help grow and produce sugars. And remember, plants make oxygen for us too. So this soil would be very beneficial for plants after a forest fire. So on the next slide, we're going to look at a few questions here that kind of help us connect everything we've learned in this lesson. So question 3 says, where does the geosphere fit into the carbon cycling during the event of the forest fire? So for this question, I would take a look at this picture, and we have to remember that when a forest fire occurs, fuel is used or burned up, right? And the fuel in this case would be trees, grass, underbrush. And if you look at this piece of tree, you can see that it's kind of turned into some coals and it's charred. And all that wood, one of the reactions of burning wood is it releases carbon and carbon dioxide. Some of that carbon is an element. Carbon is in most living things. Some of that carbon is going to fall to the ground and go in the soil. And a lot of it, if you look at this picture, it's kind of smoky and hazy. Some of that carbon is actually going to go right up into our atmosphere, okay? And we know how, we've been learning about how carbon dioxide can impact our atmosphere. We're going to be learning more about that this year. So it says, where does the geosphere fit into the carbon cycle during the event of the forest fire? Well, carbon can be released into the soil, and carbon can be released into the atmosphere. And then the plants can take in that carbon and use it to continue to grow and make oxygen for us. And some of it could also go higher up into the atmosphere where it could trap heat for the Earth. Number 4, will the geosphere suffer long-term or short-term damage? Well, back on this slide, we talked about how that the geosphere is actually able to recover over time, that forest fires can actually provide some benefits to the soil and to plant life over time. So short term, yep, there's going to be some dramatic effects. All the trees are gone. The animals have probably left. You might have pollution in rivers and pollution in our atmosphere. But over time, those areas can recover and forests can actually come back even stronger with more growth. So think about those effects when you're answering the question here. So make sure you guys check the green check mark when you're completed with this. Make sure you have a check mark by all of the slides. That means you get full credit for it. And then you click on the green turn in button, and then you finish this assignment, and you should be ready for the quiz the next day in class. If you have questions, please email or Schoology message your teacher so that they can assist you with this. Have a great day.